I played the original Kid Icarus for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and let me tell you, it is like the lamest game I've ever played. Like, there are no good weapons. There are no like circular saws. There are no Molotov cocktails. There are no like nuclear landmines. There are no like pipe bombs. Okay, let me stop with that. Okay, seriously. Um, Kid Icarus. I started my first experience with Kid Icarus was actually on the Virtual Console on the Wii. I did not get to play it back when I was discovering the NES back in about 2000, 2001. I actually did not run across it back then, so I didn't get to play it until uh, the Virtual Console. I got bought it as soon as it came out on the Virtual Console, and that I spent I on and off. I that game whooped my tail a lot. I mean, it. If you don't know, obviously, a lot more people know about it than they would have even a year ago. But it's running the same engine as Metroid, and I believe Metroid and Kid Icarus are both Famicom Disk System games in Japan, which is like a floppy disk system for the Japanese equivalent of the NES. So you could save your game on there. So then they were actual save files. This is before cartridges had batteries, which started with Zelda. So I think that's how it goes. If I'm wrong on that, go ahead and make fun of me. But anyway, I went when they brought Kid Icarus and Metroid over. They're sort of like twins. They're almost like twins, pretty much. Like same engine. They were both on Famicom Disk System. When they brought them to America, they changed them to a password system. They use the same password system pretty much, and they were advertised as the Password Pack series back when all the black box NES games had different labels, like the Sports series, the Rob series, the Adventure series, and so forth. This was like the Password Pack games, and like what Excite Bike and a couple of others were the programmable games, and yet more games that suffered from not having the disc system in the U.S. Anyway, the weird thing about Kid Icarus for me, I remember like a couple of summers ago, I'd play that game all the time on my the Wii, and I could not get past the underworld, and I didn't really do any research. I didn't read the manual or anything, so I'm like, or I read like the Wii version of the manual, but not the proper like one. I didn't go online and read an FAQ for it, so I'm like the way things are worded in those NES manuals is really ambiguous sometimes, or especially in like the version that's included on the Wii. Like, when I got the harp and all the things turn into mallets, and I'm like, okay, what do I use these for? And it says I look it up in the Wii manual, like mallets turn. Like the harp turns enemies into mallets, so you could free your friend Centurion in the fortress. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Well, anyway, the a lot of NES games do this. A lot of old games do this. A lot of platformers do this. But Kid Icarus is one of those games where you're going up vertically, and when you fall below the bottom of the screen, you die instantly. Even if there's a platform right there, and you go beneath where what's visible, you just die. It assumes you fall into your death, and it just makes you wonder what in the universe of Kid Icarus killed Pit. Like when you know that there's like a thing right there. It's just one of those things that makes the game kind of cheap. It's not as bad. Some people are like really hard on the game, like, oh, it's so unfair and cheap, and no, it's just challenging. And the weird thing the first time I played a Kid Icarus, and I finally got up to, it took me many tries. You basically have infinite lives and infinite continues. Unlike many other NES games like Mario Brothers, whatever, you actually die and have to start over from the beginning. Kid Icarus basically infinite continues, so you basically just have to keep trying until you either get good at it or you just get lucky. If you can make it to the end of the stage, you've gotten that far, and you don't. As long as you take down the password, if you're playing the NES, not so much of a problem on the Virtual Console where you have the save states. You've made it that far, and you don't have to worry about going back. But in my experience, well, I'm jumping around. Excuse me. When you get up to the fortress for the first time, and like I was like, whoa, what's this? This is totally different. First off, I heard that music sample of the background music for the fortress. It was in Electroplankton. I heard of that back in like 2005, and I never knew what game it was from. So it's cool to recognize that. And now it's sort of like a cross between a side scroller and like Zelda, where you're looking top down. Basically, in my experience, the first like the underworld is really tough as far as the game's concerned, and then the rest of the game is basically a cakewalk. Like once I got through the first world, which the my I never got really very far in the game until I got the 3D Classics version for the 3DS, And that version actually has the save feature retained in it. And sometimes when I play new versions of old games that didn't have a save feature and now you can save in it, I feel kind of like I'm cheating. But when you're playing 3D Classics Kid Icarus, you're actually playing it as it was originally played in Japan, where you could actually save your game and return to it later. But because one of the downsides, sort of, is that because it's a 3D Classics game and not a Virtual Console game, there are no save states, so you can't just like suspend your play and go open up Swap Note or the Mi Plaza or anything like that. But playing through the game, it took me about 8 hours to get through it. And it's sort of interesting how in Uprising there's that element where you could wager your hearts and against how well you do as you play the game, because how hearts kind of work in Kid Icarus, if you think about it away, it's kind of like you're wagering hearts, but not just hearts, but actually your time in collecting hearts. Specifically in the Fortress, because in the Fortress, you could easily rack up 999 hearts if you feel like just sitting there collecting hearts from those little blue Dunsparce things that come out of the pots. And basically you save up hearts, you buy the water barrel, you buy the pencil and the torch for the map, and you buy potions and potions of life, and you get the water barrel so you could save up a lot of them. And it's basically like I spent maybe 2 or 3 hours just saving up hearts. And it's a lot easier to do it. The 3D Classics version, it has some cheats in it. But really, these cheats, if you hold the jump button, you jump slightly slower. If you could now shoot upwards while you're jumping. What else is there? Oh yes, you could hold the fire button and just fire indefinitely, instead of having to tap the button. Those things are they make the game easier, but they basically offset what would be considered just like sheer cheapness or unfairness in the game if you're talking about the original true version. So, I beat the game for the first time this morning, actually. And it's sort of funny how, even back then, like, a lot of people were first introduced to Pit when he appeared in Smash Brothers Brawl. And a lot of people were kind of surprised when they actually went back and played Kid Icarus and he couldn't fly except for in the very last stage. And how I got through the last stage, it's like Medusa. I never found the pattern for fighting Medusa really. I just had so many. I had the water barrel, and a bunch of water tanks. So I was basically just able to shoot Medusa till she died, and really not care much about my health. But that's how the game's set up. It's made so you can do that. So it's sort of like if you're patient enough to collect all those hearts, you could have the benefit of those items and beat the game. The things that fall down in the second world are kind of cheap. That's mostly my thoughts about the game. It's a good game. It's kind of like it's interesting how similar Kid Icarus and Metroid's original their histories are early on, because they both came out Famicom Disk System in Japan, I believe. In the U.S., they were both both password games. Both ran on the same engine. They both. There were even Metroids in Kid that appeared in Kid Icarus. They called them something else in the manual, though. And then they both had sequels exclusively for the Game Boy. And Metroid went on to have Super Metroid, and eventually, finally in the GameCube and Game Boy Advance days, Metroid sort of re-began as a series. Whereas Kid Icarus, after the Game Boy game, that was it until Uprising. I wonder how Kid Icarus would have progressed if they had made one for Super NES, and if one would have been made for Nintendo 64. It's interesting to think how Kid Icarus could have turned out. And it's sort of interesting how Kid Icarus is the linear game, whereas Metroid is, the free roaming game. Because they're both very similar. You both use mainly projectile weapons. That's my thoughts on Kid Icarus. It's a good game. It's not as unfairly cheap as some people, I think, say it is. I'd say the 3D Classics version, if you haven't gotten it for free with the Kid Icarus promotion. I wasn't able to get Kid Icarus at launch, so I didn't get it for free. But you could download it. You go to GameStop in the U.S., and you have to download through them. I don't think it's up on the actual eShop. You actually have to download. You have to buy it as downloadable content on GameStop.com, and you get a download code, you go on the eShop and claim your download. It's a good game. I started Uprising today, and I mainly I've been playing the first stage over and over. Uh, I can understand how people could like just rage at the controls when they first try it. It takes a bit. It takes some getting used to, but it works. And I'm sort of just going through the first stage, experimenting with the different options. I mean, I knew they were really ambitious with the amount of customization and all the different weapons. Oh, I want to complain about having not having enough weapons in a game. Kid Icarus Uprising definitely isn't it. So yeah, their clubs, their claws, their guns, kind of, and grand old time. So I'm gonna have to read the manual for Kid Icarus Uprising cover to cover because there's just so much stuff that I want to actually know how to be able to use properly. Like the different abilities you could equip to weapons. It's just really incredible. The you could sort of tell this came from the creators of Smash Brothers series, and it's so far I'm pleased with it. And just comment a bit on the voice acting. It's becoming a bit of an Uprising first impressions video. People don't take it's not meant to be taken too seriously. It's a parody of of Hellenistic mythology, and it's very self aware of the fact that it's very self aware of the fact that this is like the third game in the series, and hasn't. It's interesting how they chose to go about adapting this to modern times because to a certain extent there's no history of modernization for Kid Icarus. So they basically have to act as though they have to go from Kid Icarus 1 and 2 to Uprising with 20 years of game innovation and apply that all into something that keeps true to the spirit of the original two games. And to a certain extent, another thing like the team probably had in mind was the fact that they have to make what people expect a Kid Icarus game to be like, even if they hadn't played Kid Icarus, the first two games back when they were like new games. So they also have to meet people's expectation of what Kid Icarus would play like on a modern system. Thus, why they had to have Pit fly in the game as a major part of it, because he's an angel. You expect him to fly. The game is called Kid Icarus, or character who flew, and not very successfully, mind you, but I'm happy with it so far. Maybe I'll do a separate review of some other stuff. This video's gone on long enough. If you enjoyed this video, I'm glad I was able to be of some distraction of some service for you, and thanks for watching.